Everyone, we're back from recess. This is day 2 of the budget workshop. This afternoon, we're going to be discussing the Community Services Division, and just to change some things up, Councilman Larry McKellen, who is the council member for the Community Services Division, will do the introduction of our afternoon session. Mr. McKellen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I also extend a welcome to everyone who is present and also listening and watching on the county channel. This afternoon's session deals with commentary from the Community Services and Public Safety Division. The Community Services and Public Safety Division has 27 departments, boards, committees, and districts reporting to it, so it has some extensive responsibilities. Luckily, we have 3 outstanding assistant county administrators who are responsible for the staff work in support of community services and public safety. So the presentation this afternoon will be broken down and made by all 3 of those assistant county administrators who have different agenda items to address. The first portion of the program will be presented by Audra Antonacci, who is the Assistant County Administrator, who has some responsibilities with regard to community services. Audra is a 12-year veteran, an employee of Beaufort County. She was a deputy sheriff for a couple of years, around the early 2002, and then she was the director of code enforcement for Beaufort County for 9 years. She has been the assistant county administrator for community services since July of 2021, and she comes to us with a master's degree from South University in Savannah, Georgia, Master of Public Administration. So Audra, I will turn it over to you for the first portion of the community services presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Audra.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and council members. Councilman McKellen, thank you for the introduction. Just a correction, it's been 21 years, so I might have submitted 12, but it has been 21 years that I have been with Beaufort County. The Community Service Division that I'm responsible for is the Human Services Department, Alcohol and Drug Abuse, Disability and Special Needs, Voter Registration, and Veterans Affairs. I don't know if you would like to show the video first.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman and council members, I'm Audra Antonacci Ogden, Assistant County Administrator for Community Services. I would like to share a few goals that the Community Services Departments have accomplished this year. The Alcohol and Drug Department has received over $2 million in grant money, and some still pending. Goals for FY23. Strive to return to pre-pandemic admission numbers. The goal is to serve 1,000 citizens. Expand the adolescent outreach services through grant funding to extend into the Beaufort County schools. Also expand prevention services to the Latinx community, focusing on Port Royal, Bluffton, and the town of Hilton Head. Human Services Department has hired a full-time licensed master social worker as the program coordinator. This position will focus on family engagement services. The goals for FY23 are to hire a full-time outreach specialist to work with homeless individuals and develop a protocol to assist individuals experiencing housing insecurity. Voter registration completed the installation of security system at the Bluffton satellite office. Their goals for FY23 are to locate polling places to house new precincts that will be created due to results of the precincts realignment. Disability and special needs, With the pandemic, certain internal procedures had to change, meaning telecommuting was implemented for many staff members. This has been proven to be very effective and efficient for staff members and the individuals that they serve. The goals for FY23 are to adjust to the new fee-for-service in the residential homes and enhance staff recruitment. Veterans Affairs contacted over 2,000 veterans and assisted in filling over 600 veteran claims. The goal for FY23 is to continue to increase the number of veterans we assist and form an outreach community program for our veterans. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you this budget year.
I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity of speaking today on the Community Services Division departments. I would like to start with the Human Services Department. The main goal for this department is to develop a program that would address homelessness. The department currently has a position open for an outreach specialist, which I believe we have selected a great individual that can fill the shoes of this program. Mr. Greenway's presentation yesterday on the Regional Housing Trust Fund will play a major role in this program. This will definitely need to be a collaboration of internal county agencies, municipalities, and even state and federal agencies. I would like to introduce Ben Boswell. He is the administrative manager. Ben has been with the department for 8 years, and he is a great asset to the department. He has prepared a PowerPoint that I would like him to present.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, thank you for this opportunity to talk about the goals and objectives for our department this year. When I first started back in 2013, one of the first tasks I was assigned was to do the 2014 point-in-time count. This is a count that's conducted in, I want to say, the last Saturday of January in partnership with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. This count is to assess how many homeless individuals are in our community. The results from that count were very shocking and disappointing because the numbers that we produced, the numbers that data were suggesting, and the numbers that HUD actually accepted were all very, very different numbers. And so this really led to a big focus on us to try to figure out what's going on with homelessness. How can we improve our data collection systems, methodologies to make sure that we can get accurate counts and to really transition our department. You know, we've spent about 30 years now working on youth services, and there are just hugely growing needs for vulnerable and volatile individuals in our communities, adults specifically, for services, with a big emphasis on senior citizens and people experiencing homelessness. First thing, yay, it works. So, first thing I want to do is talk about how homelessness is defined, and HUD has some very, very specific definitions for homelessness. The definitions include 4 categories. So there's homelessness and imminent homelessness, which are pretty self-explanatory. Those are folks who are actually on the street or are experiencing eviction or other conditions that will mean they'll be homeless. They can also be defined separately by federal statutes. Federal statutes include the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. You guys might see this a lot in the news as it relates to the school district. School district has usually between 250 and 350 children who are enrolled in McKinney-Vento services. That doesn't mean those children are homeless because that includes displacement as well, because of how that statute defines how children are homeless. They could be sheltered, they could be safe, but just displaced or otherwise experiencing hardships that prevent them from getting to school. In that case, they are considered homeless, but you're going to get a number that's different from other numbers, but still be correct. Victims being the 4th category, that's where you see folks in Hopeful Horizons domestic abuse shelter. They're also considered homeless. Under the definition of homeless itself, you have 2 subcategories. You have sheltered homeless and unsheltered homeless. Sheltered homeless are individuals who are in emergency shelters or transitional supportive housing. Unsheltered homeless are your folks who are going to be in cars, parks, sidewalks, abandoned buildings, or otherwise your standard street homeless individuals. that further defined by, there we go, individuals who are chronically homeless. And a chronically homeless individual is somebody who has been homeless either for a year or more, or has had at least 4 episodes of homelessness in the past 3 years, and they have a disabling condition, which includes substance use disorder, serious mental illness, a developmental disability, chronic physical illness or disability, or the co-occurrence of 2 or more of those. I also want to point out, I think this is an important statistic, that 15% of people who use emergency shelters use about 50% of the bed nights annually. So realistically, what happens is very few people end up living in those shelters. And if the shelters have a limited stay policy, then they'll migrate between shelters to get around those policies. Something I really want to talk about is the underlying cause of homelessness. Homelessness, we found, is very symptomatic, and there are a lot of conditions that lead to homelessness, and a lot of these conditions tend to be layered on top of one another and happen usually all at the same time, or in varying degrees influence one another. One of the leading causes we see is mental illness or trauma. We see this especially affects our veteran populations. PTSD, the effects it has, how people react to situations. In this case, your intervention is going to be psychiatric care. They're going to need a doctor. They're going to need medication. They're going to need other supportive services. And then depending on the severity of the mental illness, a transitional shelter or transitional housing opportunity may be effective, or they might need a permanent supportive housing situation, in which case they need to be placed somewhere where someone's going to be able to keep an eye on them all the time. Substance misuse, this is another leading cause of homelessness. Your intervention there is going to be addiction treatment. You have a little bit more housing opportunities for people dealing with addiction, transitional housing opportunities, there's residential treatment facilities, and there are several halfway houses you can go. These are sober living kind of homes. Economic pressures, this is usually the most perceived cause of homelessness, where somebody loses a house due to either losing their job or having other sort of financial difficulties. These are the folks you're going to see most often in our shelter like Family Promise. Criminal behavior is a big cause of homelessness. What people do is they enter the law enforcement or engage with law enforcement, enter the justice system, may get incarcerated. If they don't have an effective reentry service, typically what they're going to do is continue that behavior, once they get out. There's a big leading cause of recidivism, folks who struggle with how to adapt once they've gotten out of incarceration. And then, of course, some people choose to live that way. We've seen Gabby Petito in the news with the whole van life trend. This is a fast-growing trend now, especially now that people can work remotely. People are choosing to downsize, and there could be some economic pressures behind those decisions. But they're retrofitting vans, going out and living, or living in RVs. In these situations, there could be people who are on the cusp. Maybe they do, maybe they don't want to live that way. There are opportunities to talk with them to see if where they're at, if there's opportunities to help. But otherwise, if what they're doing is lawful, there's nothing you can really do. You just live and let live. I also want to talk a little bit too about we talk about victims of violence. In those cases, you've got law enforcement interventions, domestic abuse shelters, that's Hopeful Horizons. That usually leads to supportive housing opportunities with transitional housing. So our overall goal is to achieve what's called functional zero. And functional zero means that people are entering homelessness at the same rate at which we're able to exit them from homelessness. And the reality is you're never going to end homelessness. But what you can do is develop a continuum of care that's effective enough that you can move people through those systems. This local data here, this comes from Charity Tracker. So Charity Tracker is a system we have that collaborates all of our charitable agencies. We have a lot of faith community on there as well. They're able to keep track of who they're working with, what their needs are. And so this data, this is for the year 2020. We saw 100 adults experiencing homelessness. These were people who were unsheltered. And then we saw 234 families experiencing imminent homelessness. That was 321 adults, 224 children, and 111 seniors. I do want to point out that homelessness, much like poverty, it does disproportionately affect a lot of young families. You see a lot of young families, you see a lot of children. So for the outreach specialist, we've learned over the years, we know what we don't know, and I think we have a very, very clear vision of what those next steps need to be to address it, which is why we decided the time was right for us to find a full-time individual who could devote 40 hours a week to actually moving forward those next steps. This person would be the primary point of contact for homelessness in our community, where we would get all of our charitable institutions on board, faith community on board, do a big public campaign to say, guys, when you have somebody like this in this situation, let us know. Our person would be trained to be able to talk to them, figure out what's going on, make some recommendations. We want them to become a master of how to navigate those resources, both locally, regionally, and then statewide. Data collection is going to be a huge piece. There are large gaps in the data we have as it relates to homelessness. There are a lot of people that we have not been able to capture because Charity Tracker only captures those who have actually come and asked for help. We know there's a lot of people out there who are just trying to make ends meet. They may not know how to ask for help. They may not want to ask for help. And in those situations, it's tough because you can't go to a motel and ask, like, who here do you think is homeless? Or it's not appropriate to walk through Walmart parking lot and find cars, where you see a lot of clothes in the back and you think somebody might be here and knock on the window and say, hey, are you homeless? So we want to make sure that they have that agency, they have that capacity to reach out and try to educate them about opportunities that if you want that help, it's there. We have, from there, our midterm goals. We want to develop a coordinated entry system for the community, and this is really that endpoint of letting everybody know that we have a single point of contact who can be reached for issues as it relates to homelessness. They would funnel all that information through the HMIS system, which is the Homelessness Management Information System. This system actually connects us directly with HUD on that data collection and sharing. And then to enhance that annual point-in-time count that we conduct in partnership with HUD to make sure that we can collect the best data we possibly can. And then finally, in 3 to 5 years, we really hope that we're able to leverage that local data collection to start writing some grants with a long-term goal of hopefully securing long-term HUD funding. We do get some HUD funding in our community. It goes to Hopeful Horizons, Family Promise, and I believe there's a couple other smaller agencies. Housing Authority has a relationship with HUD as well. But I think there's a lot of money on the table for the services that we're trying to provide for the population we're trying to provide. We want to make sure we can capture that. We want to look at policies, local policies, see if there's any policy changes we can implement that can help reduce homelessness. We want to support our community's grassroots efforts to work with those populations. And ultimately, we hope to enhance that continuum of care so that we can achieve a point where we have a functional zero. We've got enough housing opportunities, enough treatment opportunities that as people enter homelessness, we can make sure we get them on the right track and get them out of homelessness as quickly as possible.
Excellent. Any questions for Ben? Anybody online? I do know that the pandemic created a lot more homelessness than we ever had before.
Yes, sir.
How have you been able to deal with that situation? And has it begun to decline?
We are expecting things to get a lot worse before they get better. The SC Housing First program, SC Housing Plus program has been very beneficial. What we're concerned about is that there's going to be people who've been kicking the can down the road for 18 months in terms of rent. Because we don't have any charitable agencies who have the capacity to catch somebody up on 12 months of rent. SC State Plus has been able to do that. They actually have been able to to catch some folks up. We have seen actually a decline throughout COVID in terms of requests as it relates to housing. And we attribute that to the fact that people are able to scrape by, with those housing moratoriums up. But we also are kind of bracing ourselves for a huge tidal wave of assistance requested. We know that food requests have gone up tremendously during COVID, and so we expect proportionally those housing needs requests are going to go up as well.
Very good. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Mr. Rodman.
Yeah, just a couple of options. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
just
I'll get to you, Mr. Glover.
Just a couple of observations, because I've been involved in homelessness for about a year.
You're breaking up.
Our experience has been that there's about a three-way split of the people who are homeless. There's about a third that have mental and physical disabilities. There's about 1/3 that are really at a point where they're ready to come back into society, and there's about 1/3 that is very difficult to bring them back until they've experienced more time on the street. The second thing I would argue is very important to treat the men and the women differently. Typically, for a woman, if she's on the street for 2 or 3 weeks, she will turn to prostitution, whereas a man can survive much longer time on the street. So I would encourage you to make sure that you keep that in mind as you go forward. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Glover, you had a comment? Go ahead, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think I'm on the same line as Stu. And just basically looking at the homeless, there's the chronic homelessness that's there, and they require a little bit more than just money. They need a lot of psychiatric care, and the others, some of them are just there for temporarily, so they, all we need to do is assist them as they move back into the job market. So we have an opportunity to really look at homelessness and try to really not do a Band-Aid approach, but try to really address their serious problem. That's the only comment I want to make. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Somerville.
You use the term functional zero.
Yes, sir.
I'm guessing that means that there are a certain number of people that, given that we can't require them to take medications, will always be out there.
Yes, and there's always going to be a subset of the population that is just going to choose to live that way.
Right.
There are engagement methods like motivational interviewing and things like that, where you can kind of assess where they're at. But the comment was made earlier, sometimes they're just not ready. And so one of the challenges that's been important for us as we identify someone for that position is we need somebody who we feel really confident has the skill set to develop those relationships. Because if they can't develop a positive relationship with these folks, you're not going to go in and just say, let's do something, because they're not going to want to do it. You need to develop those relationships, get to know them, get to know what those needs are. And that's going to give you that leverage to then say, for example, I know that you want to live this way, but I also know that you're worried about your diabetes. So let's talk about that. Maybe we can talk about, some other opportunities so we can address those other things you're concerned about. Because, we want to make sure that we respect what they want to do with their life, that we meet their life goals, while also making sure that, the community is safe, that they're safe, and everything else.
What is can you quantify functional zero in Beaufort County, since you're familiar with the population? Right now we have 100. What does functional zero look like?
So functional zero is defined as but 3 a month. 3 a month are entering and 3 a month are exiting. Now, obviously, we'd have to catch up on those 100 individuals, although I will say that the individual numbers themselves, they're very transient. We have a lot of people who are nomadic. They move up and down the coast. They'll leave whenever they want, come back when I want. They might have friends here. There's a family my wife worked with. She worked at Kappa for a while. She's on her way now. She still has a relationship with, and they live in a motel out in Jasper. And that's just how they want to live. And they're actually up north now because sometimes in the middle of the night they decide want to go up north. So they get in the car and they go up north. And those are really, really challenging cases because it's not great for them. It's not great for their family. But it's a personal choice.
Okay. Any final comments? Okay. Ben, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
To comment on Councilman Glover's comment in regards, there are many reasons why someone has reached homelessness. And hopefully with this program that we want to develop, we will address all those needs of what led them to be homeless. So Ben and Fred are aware of that. And, that's why I said, collaboration with other departments, it's a must. So thank you, Ben. That was a great presentation. I would like to, alcohol and drug abuse. As you are all aware, Steve has worked extremely hard in writing successful grants for the department. I have been, since my role, I've taken my role in July, been in front of council several times, in regards to the grants that he has received. I have asked him to join us today so he can share what his plan is with the over $2 million that he has received. Steve has been with the county since 2018. He came from Charleston, working in the Charleston Center as a treatment director / compliance manager. His certificates and licensures are impressive. He is a clinical addiction counselor too, a master addiction counselor, licensed professional counselor, and licensed addiction counselor, and a certified clinical supervisor. And Councilman McAllen, I believe that you would like to speak before.
Yeah, I'm just going to try and set this up for Steve. The work that he is doing there and the work you're supervising is extremely important in Beaufort County because of the problem that exists relating to drug and alcohol abuse. I have some history with this, not as a drug or alcohol abuser, but I have some history as being in this business. And I just wanted to set this up for Steve so that when he talks about the grants that he's getting, everyone is very clear on why this is so important. Drug overdose deaths rose by close to 30% in the United States in 2020, hitting the highest number that was ever recorded. More than 93,000 people died from drug overdoses in 2020. That's a 30% increase from the 72,000 deaths projected for 2019. This is the highest number of overdose deaths ever recorded in a 12-month period, and the largest increase in the United States since at least 1999. I learned many years ago that you cannot arrest your way out of this problem. You must have a three-legged stool. The other two legs, in addition to a law enforcement effort, is a prevention and education leg and a treatment and rehabilitation leg. And Steve is an expert in those areas of prevention and education, treatment and rehabilitation. The COVID-19 pandemic created a devastating collision of a health crisis in America. As in recent years, the inappropriate use of opioids was behind most of the deaths. The overdose deaths from opioids rose from 50,000 in 2019 to 70,000 in 2020. It's certainly been an incredibly uncertain and stressful time for many people, and we're seeing an increase in drug consumption, difficulty in accessing life-saving treatments for substance use disorders, and a tragic rise in overdose deaths. We must prioritize making treatment options more widely available to people with substance use disorders. It's safe to say that the provisional drug overdose death statistics for 2020 confirmed the addiction field's worst fears. It's no longer a question of doing more to combat our nation's drug problems. What we as a society are doing, putting people with drug addiction behind bars, underinvesting in prevention and compassionate medical care is not working. Even as we work hard in this area, it's tragic to see that the effective prevention and treatment tools we already have are just not being used. It seems that decades of prejudice against treating substance use disorders with medication has greatly limited their reach, partly accounting for why only 18% of people with opioid use disorder receive medications. The science of the matter is unequivocal. Addiction is a chronic and treatable medical condition. It's not a weakness of will or of character or a form of social deviance. But stigma and long-standing prejudices, even within healthcare, lead decision makers sometimes across healthcare, criminal justice, and other systems to punish people who use drugs rather than treat them. Part of the failure of the current approach to the drug crisis arises from the unrealistic expectation that people should and can just stop using drugs. Everyone with the substance use disorder, regardless of whether they are currently using drugs, needs good health care and may also need help with housing, employment, and child care needs. I think that what I've just said complements the presentation that was just made on homelessness, and I think there's a very strong connection between that and substance and alcohol use disorders. So Steve, I welcome you to the podium so that you can talk about the extraordinary reach you have in obtaining grants to help us address this issue in Beaufort County. Thanks, Audra.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Actually, I came here to apologize because we have such an abundance of individual type grants that we have, budgets that we have set up for each of these grants, plus the complicated reporting that we have to do already because of the way the South Carolina State DSSN requires us to compartmentalize everything into cost centers. So I think that with everything that we've got going right now and with the two that we're planning on doing, we'll probably be up to 16 separate budgets. So that's my apology. But if Pinky or Denise Christmas can help us to find a way to make that simplified, we welcome the opportunity. But as far as what we've been doing, there's a number of things that we've come here to you to ask permission to do, and with not only accepting grants, but also applying for grants. So first, let me just tell you what we have done, and then I'll tell you what it is that we have planned. So just so you know, we have a grant writing team that actually approached our department from Lancaster County because they were impressed with my staff. I sent 3 of them to a grant writing training. They were impressed with those staff and with a grant that they put in front of them, which was a little baby grant of about $48,000. They contacted me as a result of that and said, I'm really impressed with the way that your staff thinks and with the way that your staff writes. And would you like us to partner with you to be able to write other grants for Beaufort County? Because we like Beaufort County. And I said, well, the first reaction was, well, how much? And they said nothing, as long as you allow us to be the evaluator if you do get funded. And you know, so to me, since there was zero match and zero money to put out there, what we did was we wrote about 5 different grants last year. We were successful in a few of them, and in one of them in particular, which was our biggest grant, we partnered with EMS department. Partnered with Donna and Howell over there, and they helped us with writing the grant, and we were able to pull in $1.934 million. And that grant is going to be discussed, I think, a little bit more by Phil, maybe, because his department is actually going to take that budget underneath their umbrella. We will be getting 2 FTEs out of that position, and we'll be working very closely together. But for all practical purposes, on paper, it's going to be under EMS. And one of the things about that grant that I think is worth noting is that at this particular time, people are not coming to us in the numbers that we expect that they should. And that's because a lot of people are reluctant to come forward to treatment. That's always seemingly been the case, but more so with COVID. And so one of the things with this grant is we're developing these community outreach paramedic education teams that will actually be going to the homes of people who have overdosed. We have a meeting with our advisory council, our first meeting this Friday morning, where we're actually going to start talking about our standard operating guidelines. And then next month, we'll have a group in from Charleston and a presenter from Atlanta that will let us know how it is that we can actually work as a council to effectively use data that we collect to intervene in our community and try to reduce those numbers. Just so you know, I talked to the coroner yesterday, and we have 36 confirmed opiate deaths in this county for this year, with 2 months to go. Last year, we had 30. But the data is always behind because they have to get confirmed toxicology results before they actually confirm that it was an overdose. So basically, the data is about 6 weeks behind. I suspect that we'll probably end up with 40 to 45 deaths this year, if not more, and that's tragic. So one of the other things that we have done is we've written some other grants. One of them is through the state opioid response dollars that DSSN gets. They had different counties write competitive grants, and we were funded. And one of the grants that our department has written is for a grant called Project Stigma. What this grant will be doing, it will be doing actually just what it sounds like. They'll be doing outreach into the community with law enforcement, with medical providers, and basically trying to provide an anti-stigma message, because we know that stigma kills. There's no new FTEs associated with this grant. The money is strictly for things such as advertising, the campaign literature that we need to put together, and things of that nature. We also have another grant that we pulled in, which was for $260,000, which is called Project Mariposa. We recently talked about that here, where there is an FTE associated with that. This one has nothing to do with the opioid epidemic. This one specifically is targeting the Latinx population in Beaufort County because we have such a large population, and the data shows that they are much more at risk to have car crashes as a result of alcohol use, higher arrest than the average population. And what we want to do is hire a Spanish-speaking prevention person to do outreach in the community and to try to educate the community, try to engage folks into services that need to be engaged. And that's the primary function of that grant. We have a couple of other grants that were pulled in or pockets of money, pools of money, I'll say, that'll have their own separate individual budgets. One is related to Proviso 118.18, which the General Assembly passed to allow us to get some money because they recognize with COVID, my industry was very much affected with staff, with the ability to engage staff, retain staff, and to basically get people into services that needed to be here. Therefore, we're working on those three legs of the stool, I guess is something I'm borrowing from Larry. We're working on staff engagement, staff retention, and also we're going to enhance our marketing. All total, right now, with all of these pockets of money that we've been bringing in, it's really a good thing, but we need to have the personnel to fill the positions to do the work. That's where our biggest struggle is right now. So we are trying to do creative outreach to the community, to different folks, to let them know that Beaufort County is a wonderful place to work. We pay very well, we have great benefits, and we have a lot of hard work that needs to be done in this community. I do want to also mention that we have a zero-based budgeting sort of budget related to medication-assisted treatment, and that is basically we just kind of like pull a number out of the air to say, okay, we're going to spend $50,000 this year on medication-assisted treatment. And the way that we pull it down is when we actually provide the service, then we can pull the money down. So, we don't know how much we're going to pull down, but the money's made available through the state for us. And we have a wonderful partnership with CompHealth, Beaufort Jasper Hampton Comprehensive Health Services, where they have got 3 Data 2000 waivered physicians that can provide medication such as buprenorphine. So when we find somebody that comes to our office that may be able to benefit from medication, it's not in our scope of practice to say that they do, but if we think that they might, we let them know that we have a relationship with CompHealth to send them for an evaluation, and if the doctor thinks they're appropriate, as long as they're in treatment services with us, which is actually the best practice is to have supportive counseling along with the medical services and the medication, then we'll be able to provide the medication for them at no cost to them. The one other thing, just to talk about that relationship real quickly, we're very aware that alcohol users can also benefit from medication-assisted treatment. So Dr. Polke and Mr. Gardner and I have been in conversations about trying to get Vivitrol made available to folks in this community. That's a monthly injectable where if a person drinks alcohol, they don't get drunk. It's kind of a deterrent in that respect, and it also has an anti-craving sort of component to it, which helps to alleviate that compulsion to drink. We're working on that, and I expect that that will happen sometime in this coming year. And again, it'll have no effect on our budget per se. It'll be one of those things that we draw down. So those are a few things that we're working on with the money that we've received. And then there's 2 other things that we're working on going forward in this next year. We've already started having a conversation with my grant writing folk to do another rural opioid outreach type grant. This grant will be a $1 million grant. And what we want to do with that is we want to put personnel into the jail, and we want to put them into the emergency department. We think that's very important to be able to go to those different places, to be able to use, as Ben said, motivational enhancement therapy to folks that are in the jail, and to encourage them to get into services with us, and also in the emergency room when a person is fresh off a crisis, to try to engage them into services at Back-A-Dad, because we get so few referrals from the medical community. And lastly, with this new grant that we're hoping to submit in January, there is transitional funding that's available for that as well, because we recognize that a lot of people that are leaving jail are homeless, and we need to be able to provide for at least first month's rent and deposit to help these people to get into a safe, sober living situation. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get sober if you're living on the street. And then there's one other grant that we're looking to apply for. It's called a drug-free community grant. It's a 5-year grant with renewable for another 5 years, where we want to develop a coalition on this side of the Broad River. There's a very nice one on the south of the Broad. There's the Lackey organization, which is funded through a drug-free community grant. So we had our first formulation meeting with our coalitions, the coalition that we're trying to develop earlier this week, where we're trying to do our needs assessment for this side of the Broad River to be able to help us to write the grant for this drug-free community grant, which will be submitted in April. So that's our grant activity.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Well, it's not hard to figure out that Steve is a great asset to the Department of Alcohol and Drug. Next department is Disability and Special Needs. This department has over 100 employees, and their services range from residential homes, day programs, to early intervention. We currently have 11 residential homes throughout Beaufort County. And like I said on my video, due to the pandemic, certain procedures had to change within the department, but they actually have proven to be very effective and efficient for the department, so they continue to follow those procedures. The main goal for this department will be to adjust to the new fee-for-service that will be fully implemented in February of 2022. What that pretty much means is, and I have Bill and Beth here to speak, is how it currently works, and correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, but I think they're trying to adjust now in regards to the fee-for-service and kind of getting a jump on it, is prior to this, the service would be provided and then they would be paid, correct? Right, yes. And with the implementation of the new fee-for-service, services will have to be rendered and then reimbursed. So DSN will have to pay up front, and then they will be reimbursed for the services that they provided. Bill has been with the department for 13 years. It has been a pleasure to work with him and his staff. I didn't understand until I took this role what the DSN department offers, and it's pretty impressive, as with the rest of my departments. So Bill or Beth, if you would like to come up here. And Beth, if Bill chooses to bring her up here, in regards to a fiscal impact, I don't believe so, but that will definitely be a question for Beth. She will be able to answer that.
Good afternoon. I really enjoy talking about DSN. So giving me an opportunity to talk to you about what we do is a pleasure, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much. After listening to Steve and Ben talk about what they're doing, you recognize the importance of responding to the needs of the people in Beaufort. DSN touches the lives of over 800 families and individuals in Beaufort County. It's a major responsibility we have for this population. DSN has 4 distinct departments, and each of those departments is responsible for complying with the federal and the state regulation, which makes it awfully critical. So anything that's happening in the federal government, we have to respond to well. We have a counseling program. We have a program for early interventionists. We touch 100. We have 190 families we touch with young children from birth to 5 or 6. We have a day program, and we have 190 individuals come to our day program. That program is designed to help individuals to have independent living skills. And if you go to Publix or to the library or to a number of the stores around the area, you may see our individuals. Those are our people. Those are our people. Okay. We also have a after-school program for a number of our individuals. So I appreciate the opportunity to tell you about it. One of our biggest challenges is getting people to understand what we do. It's not one of those things that people enjoy doing unless you have someone in your family with a disability. It's one of those things that you don't have a reason to understand what we do. Audra talked a little bit about one of our greatest challenges moving forward, and that is the HHS, Department of Health and Human Services, have said effective 6 months ago and until the end of February, what they're going to do is start paying us after we deliver services. Now, that's a major change for us because up to this point, we have been getting checks from the federal government and the state government. And if you understand, with Medicaid recipients, it's a 3-to-1. For every dollar that the state sends to the federal government will match it with 3. So that's how we get our money. And what the federal government has said is that effective, like I said, about 6 months ago, everything is going to be fee for service, which means that we will not be compensated for anything we do until after we provide the service. And that's okay. I think we're going to be able to do well with that. I think it's going to be challenging for a number of staffs. We're going to have to talk about how to reorganize differently to make sure that people understand the importance of what we do. It's more a business model, and I think it's going to work out fairly well for us. The other challenge we have, and we're going to continue to pay attention to, is active recruitment of individuals who want to work with this population. Most people avoid talking and working with people with disability. I am of the opinion that every one of us is an accident from being disabled. And it's really hard for people to understand that, and so they tend to ignore or not pay a lot of attention to us unless you have a family member. What we're doing is we've been actively recruiting individuals to come to work with DSN, and it's changed. And with your commitment and improvement in salary, it's made a difference in the number of recruitment. 2 months ago, I would have told you that we had about 38 vacancies. Right now, we have about 18. And I think it's because, well, I know it's because of what you guys have done, which I really appreciate. Also, there's been a number of homes and programs that have been terminated or have been lost their license, and we're getting some of their employees. So it's making a difference. And right now we're doing really well in the day program and then also in our home. One of the other things we're going to do is we're working with the garage very closely about replacing some of our vehicles. We have a 5 to 7 year life cycle for our vehicles. We will be coming to you again asking for permission to purchase some vehicles. We have to do that because what we're finding is that the providing transportation and where a number of our consumers live, it becomes a risk if we do not replace our vehicles on there. The last thing I'd like to talk about is how to better educate the community about what we do. We've done a number of things. We've advertised, we've gone out to work job fairs, and we've talked about some of the things that we try to do. But as I've said, I think it's very, very difficult for people to understand some of the things that we do. I invite each of you to come down and visit us and say, we have a beautiful facility. You purchased 10 acres about 7-8 years ago, and we have a really, really nice facility. Do we not?
Yes, you do.
Yes.
It's gorgeous.
So please come down and visit us. Are there any questions?
Mr. Summers?
Yes.
You said you had 38 vacancies at one time. My jaw dropped. If you had 38 vacancies, how many active employees did you have then?
We talk about 129 employees. We have about 129 employees, and what our problem is that, and hopefully we'll get a better handle on that. When I said our vacancies, we were really down, and I've worked in homes because we were short staffed. We had about 38 vacant positions at about a couple months ago. Yeah.
Tell me what the staffing of a home looks like. Is it a 24/7 or is it?
It is 24/7. Yes, it is. We have 24/7 supervision in all 11 homes.
So you have to have 3 people in there on any given day?
Absolutely. And in 2 of our homes, we have double staffing because of the condition of some of the consumers. If they're wheelchair bound, if they have certain limitations, then we have to have double staffing. Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Howard?
The daytime program, are you seeing the numbers increase now with more people access to vaccination?
We're not at capacity. We're not at capacity because we're slowly opening because of COVID. We have about 85 of the 140 people that come.
Okay.
And we have about 64% of our individuals are working out in the community, which is a plus. Yeah.
Where's the line between what you do and geriatric care? I mean, you probably don't have people in your day care that are in their 90s, right?
And you can stay in our program until you're 90 or 100. We say from birth, if we have babies at birth, our pediatrician will call us and tell us that that child is not meeting a certain mark in their life and their growth. So we get referrals from them, and once they leave high school, our program can provide services to individuals up until they're 90 or 100. And if they get to the point where they can no longer function, then we can transfer them to another facility.
Because you do elder care, essentially.
Yes. But they have to be individuals who have been assessed by the state as having a disability. All of our individuals, every one of our individuals have
But
been.
being old isn't a disability?
Old is not a disability,
I
no.
want to argue about that.
No.
Okay, some other time we'll argue about that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Stu, if I could comment, Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, of all the things that I've observed in Beaufort County since I've been here, I think the most impressive one that we can be the most proud of is what has happened with the special needs program. And I think, you know, we lead the state in that. And I've just been very proud of everything that they've done. With our growth in the population, though, we need to be sensitive to whether or not they may need some more residential homes in time and not have to play catch up on that. But I'm very proud of what they do.
One last thing, tell everybody here, what sets Beaufort County apart from the other 45 counties?
Well,
in
okay, I can tell you that of the 46 counties in the state, Beaufort County is the only one that we're county employees. And I tell you, that's a plus. I compliment you very much for allowing us to be county employees. If that was not the case, we'd have a real problem. All the other providers in the state recognize the important role that we have here. A lot of them have to do fundraisers. A number of them have left and combined with other counties in order to provide services. So this is it's a real plus, and I really hope that you understand the importance of us being county employees.
How much of your budget comes from the county?
No, we get Medicaid. Most of the what you do, and in some cases you complement our budget by like $3 or $4 million, which is a plus, which is a real plus.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And we appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
We're not disabled. It's very disappointing.
Real quick, I believe I'm at my time. Voter registration, Marie would like to attend today, but she is extremely busy with the election that just happened and wrapping up with that election. She is in certification hearings today, so that is why she's not able to join us. But like I said in my video, they are, for 22-23, they were trying to secure polling places in regards to the realignment. And they are preparing for the November 2022 midterm general election. Veterans Affairs. I think this department, like many others, is a great asset to Beaufort County. I can't explain how more rewarding it is to serve our veterans. The goal for the department is to develop a community outreach program. I think we need to get out there in the community and advise our veterans what we can offer to them. So that is what they're going to strive to succeed. We are looking forward to the Veterans Day Parade scheduled for November 1st, starting at 10 a.m. I hope we all see you there. It will be the traditional parade route, with the parade ending at Boundary and Bladen Street. And as you all are aware, the local veteran Ray Stokes has been named the County Veterans Day Parade Grand Marshal. So thank you again for your time, and I would like to say in closing that I have a great team. I enjoy working with them. They have been very kind to me, patient with me in learning this new role. So it is a pleasure to work with all the department heads and their staff that is under me. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Larry,
Yeah,
moving on to the next
yep.
section.
Yeah, next presentation is going to be made by Chuck Atkinson. Chuck made a presentation yesterday on natural resources, and this complements that because Chuck's duties are pretty much split these days as a staff assigned to both natural resources and to community services. Chuck has been with the county for 18 years. He has a master's degree in business management. He was the Beaufort County Chief Building Inspector. He was the Florence County Building Codes Director and Director of Instruction for the International Code Council. He was the Beaufort County Building Codes Director. And since last year, he is the Beaufort County Assistant Administrator in a division that supervises planning, zoning, building codes, code enforcement, parks and recreation, and library departments. The services that are provided by these departments include literacy programming and materials, land use planning, ordinance development and enforcement, permitting, floodplain management, recreation, facilities, and programming. So thanks, Chuck, for stepping up to give us the remainder of the presentation you began yesterday. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity. To get us started, we have 3 short presentations. I'd like to start with Rob Merchant. He's going to come and share how the comprehensive plan relates to community services.
Well, once again, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the comp plan. So in the comprehensive plan, we have 3 interwoven themes that work their way through the whole document. If you can go to the next slide. They are equity, resilience, and unique to place. And I think much of what the Community Services Committee, their charge deals with this issue of equity, and that is that Beaufort County is a great place to live, work, and play. But, it is certainly those who are more vulnerable in our society, those who are economically disadvantaged, or persons with disabilities, it could be not as great of a place as for those who are more privileged. And so the idea is that our actions as a county, the way we distribute services or facilities, all of that is keeping in mind those who are most vulnerable in our society. And so we want to make sure that, we're doing that in what we do in the county. And it really affects a cross-section of strategies. If you go to the next slide. When we look at land use, we have a great, people who live in our rural areas, there's a real network and support of family and community. So in what ways can our land use policies really promote that network? With transportation, making sure that other modes of transportation are available, such as cycling, walking, public transportation for those who do not have the ability or prefer not to drive in a car. Affordable housing is a main focus of that, everywhere from the needs of workforce housing all the way to homelessness. What actions can we take to make sure that we are addressing those needs? And then also, in the way we, infrastructure, public services, our libraries, parks, and schools, one of the great benefits, and, we'll hear about parks and recreation, is that when we have free facilities, such as a county park or, the Spanish Moss Trail, that's something that is, people of all income levels, places in life can enjoy equally. And, when I'm on the Spanish Moss Trail, I see people who are, using it to go to their jobs, everything from that to people who are power walking in the morning. So, those types of facilities, greatly, serve a cross-section of our society. What we anticipate in the next year, and I think I'm maybe stealing a little thunder, but we have a Parks and Rec needs analysis that we're doing. You can go to the next slide. And that's something when we look at our Parks and Recreation, keeping in mind how it is serving all of our county and meeting those with the greatest needs. And then also, we had mentioned yesterday, we intend to work out in St. Helena Island with the Cultural Protection Overlay District, but those rural land use policies, I think, will affect, we want to evaluate, make sure they're working, refine them where needed, and that really affects the county as a whole. So that's just a brief overview, and, so if you have any questions, just let me know.
Any questions? Thank you, Rob.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Rob. So at this time, I would like to ask our Parks and Rec Director, Shannon Loper, to come up. She's going to share a few of our successes and our plan for fiscal year 2023.
Good afternoon. So just to briefly go over a few things that we've accomplished, that we have ongoing, and that we look to improve on. Some of the things that we have accomplished so far, we have gotten the Buckwalter, the Brace project is underway, which is the Buckwalter expansion. The master plan was awarded. All basketball and tennis courts have either been resurfaced or still in the process of being resurfaced throughout the entire county, both north and south. Pickleball courts were established in 3 of those locations. That would be Southside, Shell Point, and Bluffton Center. 2 grants were awarded for the downtown tennis courts. We were able to get ATAX grant funding as well as PARD funding for that. Lynn Brown will be opened in December. It will be open full-time. The batting cage additions at Corson Tate and Burton Wells, those were accomplished with the $5 fund that council approved years ago. We have reskinned the baseball and softball fields at Burton Wells, Michael C. Raleigh, and Oscar Frazier. That's a very extensive process of removing all the existing clay and bringing in new clay. Technically should be done every 5 years, and it's been 20 since it's been done, so we finally got that accomplished. Program growth and successes in all sports. Each and every one of our sports we have seen increases in. Despite COVID, we have not slowed down at all. Ongoing projects that we have is to get the overall Parks and Rec Master Plan completed. The downtown tennis remodeled and underway, which hopefully is in engineering's hands. That will start very soon. The Brace project should start. All the surveying has been done. We're waiting on the final approval from the town of Bluffton on the revised master plan. Despite losing a lot of land, we're still able to add 5 additional soccer fields out there. The Corson Tate Lights it's now in the hands of going out for an RFP, and that will be handled through your impact fees. Proposal to start after-school summer camp and seniors and to bring that back under the Parks and Rec Department. We have met with the engineers, and we are looking at adding new restrooms to both Bruce Edgerly in Port Royal and Old Burton Wells to replace those old bathrooms. And then disc golf at Burton Wells, which we think we can do in-house with purchasing the equipment, and we're working with the engineering department as well as Public Works. Upcoming needs, we would like to replace some 20-year-old equipment. Some of our field equipment goes back to the 80s, so it's been good for us, but it's on its last leg. We need to look at resodding both Barker Field and Bluffton Center. Both of those fields, since taking over the grounds maintenance under Parks and Rec, one thing that we've stopped is not allowing the same mower to cut grass that cuts the fields, because what it does is brings the weeds in and then they start growing. Both of those fields, the weeds have taken over and there's no sod left. We'd like to fix drainage issues that we have with the soccer fields at Burton Wells. Both of the soccer fields at Burton Wells, if you go out and look at them, they're lower than the wood area, so when it rains, we have a lot of drainage issues out there. We'd like to replace some playgrounds at Gloria Potts, Wesley Felix, Bluffton Center, and Scott. Those playgrounds are extremely old. They're the old metal playgrounds that they don't even make anymore. We'd like to replace the fencing at Basil Green that is all rusted. We need to look at land for baseball expansion south of the Broad. We're currently about a year away from having to cap our program with baseball and softball and only allow so many kids to sign up. Update the Lynn Brown restrooms for handicapped. Right now, they're not handicap accessible. And replace and update the basketball goals at Lynn Brown, that and Burton Wells. With our basketball program, we start at age 4, so the goals need to go up and down to accommodate the height, and neither one of those are adjustable. And then renovate our outlying centers, which are long overdue for renovations.
Questions for Shannon? Mr. Somerville?
You mentioned 2 grants for the downtown tennis courts. Is that going to be enough to do that work, or we're going to have to?
Will probably not quite be enough, but we have the sale of Bob Jones that we will be able to utilize the money for.
You mentioned a $5 fee to do the batting cages at Tate Course and then one other place. Remind me what that is, because I forgot.
So years ago, council passed an ordinance that $5 of every registration taken in for any sport goes into a fund account, and that money can only be spent on athletic equipment and needs.
As opposed to general fund?
Correct.
Got it, thank you.
Shannon, did you mention the situation with the pools countywide?
So we're still waiting on getting information back from engineering, so no, sir, I did not mention that.
Okay.
Ms. Howard?
Wanted to just say thank you again for making pickleball available north of the Broad. I saw teams playing this morning on the way to this meeting. The other thing is, long-term, are you going to be having public meetings for the long-term plan ahead for recreation, and do you know when yet?
For the master plan?
Right.
So Wooden Partners is currently working on a schedule, and yes, they will have different meetings throughout the county, and once we get those, we will get those sent out, and also get them over to Chris so that we can publicize them and make sure that people are aware of each and every one of them.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? Just one quick thing for me. I know there's a raging debate between synthetic versus grass. Have we looked into that when we're talking about fields? Especially since when you're playing on grass fields, the optimum thing at some point in time is to allow a field to rest, because if you keep playing on it, you just tear it up.
Correct. So we have looked at, with Brace was awarded to Wooden Partners. They actually are trying to get us set up on a tour of a turf factory. Turf has come a long way in the last 10 years. You know, at one point it was not considered very safe. Since then, it has come a long way, and as you know, all of Beaufort County high schools are replacing their fields the same way. So it is something that we are pushing for. Maybe not all the fields, but have some of them so that at least we can leave them open year-round, because currently we have to have shutdown time for each and every field, and it causes issues in the programs.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question.
Oh, Mr. Hervishon has a question.
Yep, sorry. So, as a parent of 3 young children that just all got done soccer season at Buckwalter, it seems as though that complex is very cramped, number one, but number two, the parking lot is also very cramped, and I would almost say it's a safety hazard. So I'm wondering if in that whole Buckwalter discussion, if you just kind of give us an update of what's going to happen with the soccer fields or what the future plans are with the soccer fields, just provide some more color on that.
So with the Brace project, there will be parking added to that. Yes and no to the parking. I think a lot of it is we have more of a walking issue than a parking issue, because we have the same thing during basketball season. People park all out front and in the grass rather than use the parking spaces at the back of the parking lot because they don't want to walk. And the same thing for the soccer games. We've noticed that the whole front parking lot will stay empty, and everybody crams to the back by the soccer fields. So adequately, right now, we do have the right parking. It's just that people don't want to use the parking spaces that we have.
Okay. Could that be solved with additional signage or just education, parental education, things like that?
We have put the no parking signs in the grass areas and in various areas that we've tried to get people to avoid. But other than getting the police out there each and every time and, moving them or citing them, which is something that we try not to cause a scene over, there's not a whole lot. I mean, you could stand out there and point, but people still just don't want to walk.
Got it. And approximately how many more parking spaces will be added with that project?
So on the other side of the current 3 fields are 2 more fields, and so parking is going to go around the back, and the wooded area currently to the left of the skate park, there'll be more parking. I'm not sure how many spaces, but I know that that has been discussed, and they can't get approval for the plans without the additional parking spaces needed.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Shannon.
All right, and to conclude our presentation, I would like to talk a little bit about zoning and planning and building codes and the volume of work that we have sort of been inundated with over the last 3 years. When we went into COVID, I personally expected things to slow down. That did not come true. It actually was just the opposite. And to give you some idea of what I'm talking about, in 2019, which was a banner year for us, we sold 309 new home permits in unincorporated Beaufort County. Moving into 2020, we sold 368 new home permits. In that same full year, we did 13,744 field inspections. This year, from January through July, we have already sold 373 new home permits and have done 8,517 inspections. When you couple that with the fact that it is difficult to find qualified folks to come to work for you and achieve all of the required certifications, it has been a challenge. But we're working it out. We're going to make it through. It baffles me. I don't know exactly where all of these homes or folks who are buying these homes are coming from, but almost all of them are sold before they're even built. So it's pretty impressive considering the pandemic.
Well, we can tell you where they're going.
Well, absolutely, right. I don't know who's coming here to buy them. That's the question. The second thing, two more things. Our InterGov program, we went live last week with the in-house portion, and I have a meeting at 4 o'clock this afternoon with AMS, who is our credit card online provider. Once we get them on board, our online section, so that folks can check their status, they can apply for permits online, pay online, all of that within, I would say, the next 2 weeks should be up and running. It has been a long time coming. It's about a 3-year project, and the light's at the end of the tunnel, so we're very close. One additional achievement we've had within the Building Codes Department is our renewal of our CRS rating. During our last audit in 2017, we achieved a Class 5 rating. With CRS, this is a volunteer program within the National Flood Insurance Program that sets discounts for the flood insurance rates that folks pay within the county. A 9 or a 10 is the low end of the scale. A 1 is the best you can be. As a 5, in 2017, we scored 2,539 points. We were a Class 5, and during our most recent audit that ended in April of this year, we increased that standing and we scored 2,629 points. So we will maintain that Class 5 rating for the next 3 years. That gives a 25% reduction for everyone who lives in a special flood hazard area on their insurance rate, and a 10% reduction for anyone who's outside of those. To give a little more perspective on it, there are 22,000 communities that participate in FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program nationwide. Of these communities, 1,444 voluntarily participate in the Community Rating System program. And out of that 1,444, only 73 have a CRS rating of 5 or higher. So we can say that we are in the top 73 out of 22,000 National Flood Insurance Program communities nationwide. That's really, really something that we should be proud of. It was extremely difficult during this cycle because we were having to do things electronically. They couldn't come here. We provided them with over 400 pages of documents electronically, not including our flood certificates. The level of scrutiny that they put us under is pretty intense. To give you an idea, on a flood certificate, which can be 6 pages long, if there is one typo, the whole thing is rejected. If all the numbers are correct and it says Beaufort and not Beaufort County, or if it's abbreviated incorrectly, it gets rejected. So it's a very high mark, and I'm extremely proud of my staff for what they've accomplished. So that concludes our presentation, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, let me extend my thanks to Audra and to Chuck and to Ben and Steve and Rob and Shannon for those reports. That closes out community services, and now we move into public safety. The Assistant County Administrator for Public Safety is Phil Foote. I have known Phil for about 15 years. I consider him to be a consummate professional. Phil was a United States Marine for 8 years and began his career in the county with the Beaufort County Detention Center, where he worked for 29 years and ended as the director with the rank of colonel of the Beaufort County Detention Center, which makes him, in my opinion, an expert in matters relating to the detention center. And in 2012, he became the Assistant County Administrator for Public Safety. Phil currently supervises 4 public safety departments with a combined staff of 224. And that covers animal services and control, the detention center, emergency medical services, and the all-famous mosquito control department. So Colonel Foote, if you would be kind enough to take us through your agenda, I'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction. Good afternoon, Council. It's good to be here. I do believe my brother is on TV and he's going to have a presentation.
Video. I'm sorry.
I know it's late in the day. We've had lunch. Hello, Chairman Passman, council members, and the chairman of the Community Services Public Safety Committee, Councilman McKellen. Today I'd like to talk to you about the Public Safety Division and how the Public Safety Division plays into the live, work, and play theme that we are going with within our community. So the Public Safety Division is a very important division to help with that live, work, and play within our community. We keep our public safe in a number of different ways, and I'd like to go over a few of those with you today. But first and foremost, I think the most important thing for the Public Safety Division is that each one of our departments, all 4 of the departments, Animal Services, Detention Center, EMS, and Mosquito Control, all have mission statements, but the Public Safety Division as itself, as a whole, has a mission statement, and I think that's very important that you know what your mission statement is. So I'd like to read to you what our mission statement is for the Public Safety Division. The Beaufort County Public Safety Division is committed to creating a safe environment for all the citizens and visitors. This is done by working in partnership with our community, as well as our military community, to identify and resolve public safety concerns. All public safety employees are devoted to providing professional and progressive services within all departments of the Public Safety Division. I think that's an important thing to know what your mission is, and that's what the Public Safety Division's mission statement is. So let's go over a few things, a few departments that are in the Public Safety Division. Animal Services being number 1, to help with the live, work, and play within our community. Obviously, we're dealing with a lot of domesticated animals within our community. If you didn't think about it, we have estimated probably about 100,000 domesticated animals within Beaufort County. And I'm only talking about dogs and cats. I'm not even talking about horses, emus, camels, ferrets, snakes, reptiles, gerbils, hamsters, and everything else that people like to keep as pets. So we have a lot of animals within Beaufort County, and that's not even our wildlife too. And we keep everybody and all of our citizens safe with 4 animal service officers for the entire county. They also work within the municipalities too. So they stay rather busy looking after our animals and keeping our citizens safe from aggressive animals, keeping the animals safe from being out there and being tied up to trees and anything else that may happen to those animals. So we do have places to take them to our wonderful shelter that had been built 2 years ago. One of the other important things that Animal Services is trying to do this year, and we're almost finished with this program, trying to put it together, is our oral rabies vaccine program. And this is where we're going to start tackling, trying to help subdue the rabies that's within the county that is being transmitted between wildlife and domesticated animals. And how we're going to do that is by putting out little small bait stations where raccoons, who are the primary movers of rabies, and other animals to eat these little baits that have oral rabies vaccines in them, and hopefully reduce the population of rabies within this county being transferred to our domesticated animals. So that's one of the programs we're working on. We're working on that with South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control, DHEC, and also South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, DNR. And once we have that program up and running, I will update you again about that too. Next department is the detention center. Detention center is a place where we can find people that may break our laws, and so we have to keep our citizens safe again to help them live, work, and play in a safe environment. So we have to have a safe environment, a humane environment to keep people that break the law, to hold them until the court systems do whatever they need to do with them as far as going through the criminal justice system. Just to update you on the detention center, we are 3/4 of the way done with our update of our integrated electronic security upgrade. That was already funded by council at $1.5 million. We will have another update once we are completed with that process. The next program that's up for updating is going to be our HVACs. We have 13 roof units. All of them are going to be replaced. The contract is already out. It's going to be about a $900,000 upgrade for all 13 roof units. That will help with the circulation within the detention center. We're putting in COVID type of mitigating inside the system. So hopefully that will help put down the transmission of COVID and any other airborne diseases that are coming through the facility. The other things that are coming up for updating will be our walk-in coolers and freezer. They've been there since the building was open. It's now time to replace those. It'll be about $250,000 project, and those will be taken care of relatively soon. The other thing that we will be talking later at budget talks will be about medical for inmates. I think that's something that we need to have a discussion about, and also about mental health within inside the facility and how we provide mental health services to the inmates that are confined in our facility. So we will be talking about that later at our budget review and talks. The next department that helps us live, work, and play in Beaufort County is EMS, very important. Not everybody wants to have EMS around because you don't want to think about those bad times, but when something terrible happens, you want to know that you have professionals responding to you with the most advanced technological equipment that we can have, and we are there. I think that our system is probably one of the best systems in the state, and I would put it up against anybody in the country too. So I'm very proud of our EMS. As you well know, we opened up our Shanklin North Station out by the Marine Corps Air Station. Our next station that opened was down south in Bluffton. That was our Red Barn Station. That's open so that we can take care of the growing population in the Bluffton area. The next renovation that's going out will be for the Sun City Fire Station. We will be putting that RFQ out and getting that renovation done. And then on the horizon, we are in the planning process of looking at a combined station with the town of Bluffton Fire Department and EMS within Sun City to help with response times within Sun City. So that is something coming up in the future. Again, something that we're going to have to talk about during budget talks. The last department in the Public Safety Division is our mosquito control. And wow, what would we do without mosquito control in the Low Country? As we know, the mosquito is the main vector in the world for transmitting diseases. And some of those diseases that we find in the Low Country are West Nile and Triple E are the biggest ones that we worry about. And how do we manage that, and how do we manage the mosquito population? Well, we do it with a three-pronged approach. We do it by larviciding with our helicopter, so we catch them at the larvae state and try to kill them there. We also do stormwater treatment, so all 34,000 stormwater drains are treated so to stop the breeding of mosquitoes. And then the last leg of that prong would be our adulticiding, which we do with our truck spraying and also with our aerial spraying with our Bronco aircraft. And that's how we try to keep the mosquito population down as much as possible and keep the diseases out as much as possible. One of the other important things is that we have a lab on site. Our lab is not a certified lab like DHEC's lab is, but our lab does identify mosquito breeding, and we also identify mosquito groups that may be transmitting West Nile or Triple E. It's very important to know where those locations are relatively quick because mosquito breeding takes place in cycles, a 7-day cycle. And so we want to be able to figure that out ahead of time and be able to treat that area so that we can knock that disease out as quick as possible. So that is why we have our own lab on site. One of the things we will be talking again about in upcoming budget, we will be putting a capital request to update our lab. It is time for that lab to now be updated. So we will be coming back into the budget talks about putting that into a capital request. So with that's how the Public Safety Division helps our community live, work, and play really hard. Thank you again for everyone's support all the time. Thank you.
Your brother's much older than you, isn't he?
He is a lot older. I think he's about 10 years older than me.
Okay. That was a great presentation.
Well, thank you, sir. As I said, the Public Safety Division is an important division, and to help our citizens live, work, and play, you need us here. And so I'm very proud of my staff and what they have accomplished through the years. Starting with Animal Services, we hired Tallulah in 2012. I think everybody has had an opportunity to meet Tallulah. Tallulah is one of those that stays outside the box all the time. She's never been in a box. She doesn't know what the box is. And for an old Marine like me, it's tough because I'm used to being in that box. So she keeps us going. And when we first hired her, we had a mission to get Animal Services from where it was to where it is now. And that's been a long process over these many years with Tallulah. And that's the reason why I have no hair left, because she keeps me busy. But, we went from a shelter that was undesirable to a shelter that is a state-of-the-art. And we can thank council and the citizens for that. We've shown where our hearts are, and that's with taking care of our animals within this county. And we do that with 4 animal control officers throughout the entire county. We also go inside the municipalities too, so those 4 officers are running at all times. I get calls Tallulah's usually good at calling me at 6 o'clock in the morning to let me know she's been up since 2 chasing hogs or running down a horse. They keep very busy, and it's also a very dangerous job. And if you don't know or haven't thought about it, going out there and trying to face down an aggressive dog that is loose can be quite challenging. And about a week ago, one of our animal control officers, my senior one, got bit in the face by one of those dogs. Luckily, he's okay, but he did get a puncture wound on his face. And those are some of the things that we're up against, because some of these animals are really dangerous. And we already know that because we see it in the news all the time, where somebody gets mauled really bad or even killed from one of these animals. And so they do keep us safe out there by making sure that those aggressive animals are taken in and dealt with. But I do want to take my hat off to Tallulah, because she really has done yeoman's work as far as getting us from a euthanasia rate that was way up in the 80 percentile down to where we're at right now, where we're at about 10%. And she's done that with putting a partnership together with Hilton Head Humane Association. And so again, I want to thank Hilton Head Humane Association, the executive director, Chuck Lane, and the director of the Humane Association, Franny Gerthofer. Both of them have really worked hard to help the citizens of Beaver County keep their animals and live, work, and play here. So if there's any questions about animal services, I'd be happy to answer them at this time. I know I talked about on the video about our oral rabies vaccine program that we're trying to put together. Rabies is a tough one to collect data on, because when you have wildlife that moves most of the rabies, raccoons are the biggest problem with rabies. They're about close to 50% of the problem when it comes to rabies in the wildlife. And so to actually get tangible data, you have to capture them, and then you'd have to, obviously test them for the rabies. And lots of times those animals in the wild die before we'll ever get to see them, or DHEC will ever get a chance to test them. So that's the reason why data sometimes is hard to show tangible results on. Are we making a difference? I think the important thing that we need to understand here is that we certainly want to keep that down from transmitting to a human, from going from a wildlife to a dog or a cat and then moving on to a human. And how we do that is making sure that everybody that has domesticated animals get their rabies vaccinations done for their animals. And that's what our animal control officers do, is out there making sure that happens. So we're still in the phase of working with Department of Natural Resources on how we will collect data. And once we get that program started and moving, we will come back once again to council and explain the program again better. Any questions about animal service?
I got a question. Yep.
Mr. Lawson will go first. Mr. Glover, were you trying to ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, hang on one second. Mr. Lawson will go first.
Talk about mosquito control. I want to file a complaint because I actually got bit by a mosquito.
You did?
This fall.
Did you bring it so we could test it?
And I say that in jest because you guys have done a phenomenal job. I've lived here for 30 years, and I can tell you, living through mosquitoes and how bad they were and what we've done. So it's one of those things that no one knows what they don't know. So they obviously, you being out there and taking care of mosquitoes, I actually even said that I hadn't seen one. Whenever I got bit, I seriously got bit. I was like, this is the first mosquito I've seen in a year or months or whatever it is. So I want to commend you on that, because again, that's a job that when you do a great job, nobody knows you're doing a great job because there's no mosquitoes. So again, thank you for that. And again, also for everything you do for animal control and the detention center and how much hard you work. So thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
And it is amazing, the 34,000 stormwater drains, because, on my walks through Sun City, I go by the drains and I see the numbers on them and I go, oh my God, that's a big number. It's part of the
As more
34,000.
development comes in, more stormwater drains that we have to
Yes,
treat.
yes, absolutely. Mr. Glover, you had a question.
Yes, I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Foote, I want to talk about the detention center. Not necessarily about what we're doing there. I'm more concerned about longevity of inmates, if that's the right terminology. Do you have an average stay of people who are brought to the detention center in and out? And the reason I'm asking the question is, you know, we're funding the solicitor's office, and we're funding the public defender's office, and we're also funding the detention center. And it seems to me that if we don't balance those, we're just going to continue to have an ever unending fiscal matter. So are the inmates in and out, or are they staying there longer than they should be? And do you have any records of that at all? And also, when you ask for records, you need to see whether there's a trend over a 5-year period of time. This has been the average stay for inmates, and this is what it is today. Do you have that kind of statistics?
Well, thank you for that question, Mr. Glover. Yes, sir, we do keep those statistics. One of the things that I made sure of when I was running the detention center was that we did a year-end report that captured so much statistics that I think some people didn't want to read that report, but it was important to keep documentation of the amount of inmates that come in, how long they stay, their average length of stay, their average daily population. So yes, we do keep all that. We have seen a trend of, we had been as high as 14 days as an average length of stay. And that has to take account for people that are booked in and leave on the same day, and people that stay for possibly 2 years. So there's an average in there, and we have gotten as high as 14 days, which is rather high for a detention facility. We're supposed to be short-term. We are averaging right now at about 10 average length of stay. 10 days is about the average length of stay. Our average daily population is running right now at about 115, which is about 100 inmates down from where we normally are. So COVID has done some good things and has done some bad things. And good thing is the court systems have tried not to keep people in jail that possibly could be bonded and released, and keeping us with the ones that probably need to stay with us. And then also the other side of that is that a whole lot of people aren't being sentenced because the courts have been closed. And so we don't have sentenced inmates. And you're probably wondering, what am I talking about? What's that the problem for? Well, in order to run a facility, you have to have so many people working inside that facility. And to run our facility, it takes 22 inmates that are sentenced in order for food service prep, washing pots and pans, cleaning up, janitorial services, laundry services. So it takes 22 of those inmates to do that. We've been running with none. So you can only guess who's been washing pots and pans, and who's been picking up trays, and who's been cleaning, and who's been taking the trash out. That's been our officers in there doing that because we don't have any labor. And it's not just us. It's been seen that same way all the way across. Nobody can find state inmates to come back. We are a designated facility for Department of Corrections, which means that we have a contract with Department of Corrections, and we can bring people back that meet the classification criteria to be an inmate worker and come back to the county. Can't even find those. Department of Corrections holding on to them. So it's been a trying time, and thank you, Councilman Glover, for bringing that up, because you know, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the detention center, and one of the issues there obviously is, if you've been watching the news, certainly I'm hyper-focused on it, but it is staffing issues. Just like everybody else in this free world, staffing is a problem. And staffing, when you get into a correctional setting, to become a problem, it becomes a critical problem. And we are having problems finding staff, just like every other facility. There was a national article that came out that this is nationwide. There's a problem. And we're trying our best to recruit. We're hoping, and we were hoping that the class and comp study would help us bring some more people in. We've stayed flat. We haven't been able to bring any more talented people in, but I want to thank Eric Greenway, our county administrator, for keeping affordable housing in the forefront here. Because as we talk about asking people to come here and live and work and play here, and especially the work part, they got to be able to afford housing to be here. And affordable housing is going to be very, very important for our labor force. And so I hope that we continue down that path of looking at affordable housing. I think that's a very important thing. And it's going to be important for us in order to find labor to work. We certainly are going to keep trying. We're advertising out there. Hopefully soon you will see advertisement when you go pump your gas. You'll see advertisement for, we need some strong people to come work at the detention center. And I don't mean this kind of strong. I mean, I need people that have strong minds and strong way of talking and hopefully use it together at the same time. Some people have a problem with using this and not using this, which can get you in problems sometimes. But we need people that can talk to people, because working in a correctional setting, you're not working with machines. You're working with people. And these are people out of our community. I mean, we're not bringing people in from other states. We're working with people that are arrested in our community. And we need to be able to talk to them. We need to be able to run them through a humane facility, because they are going to be released back into our community again. And another person I want to thank is Steve. Steve, thanks for staying around and listening to me. I appreciate you. Appreciate your solidarity there. We talked about grants, and I think one of the important things that we do well inside the county is we work well together. And that's very important, because lots of times if you work in your own silo, you don't know what else is out there. And there's a lot of things that cross around here. And we talk about people with alcohol and drug addiction. Well, guess where they usually end up at? They usually end up in the detention center. They usually end up being transported by EMS, and they usually end up in the ER. And the same problem we have with mental health issues. We talked about mental health issues, and we've got that same issue. We've got people that are caught up in this system and somehow just can't get out of it. And I have fought about mental health for over 20 years inside the detention center, because it is a problem. It is a huge problem for us. If you look at percentage-wise, it's not a big problem, because there's not a lot of people out there that have mental illnesses, but it is a big problem when you cut down that population and put them inside a detention center. And one of the things that we've been trying to work through all this is, what are we going to do about mental health inside the facilities? I don't know if you remember, probably in the early 90s is when mental health took a turn. They wanted to close down all the big institutions, and the plan was, philosophy-wise, was to move all those people that were institutionalized back to the community and allow the community health centers to follow up with follow-up care, to get them their medications, to get their counseling to them, and help them reunite themselves into society. It may have worked for a few percentages there, but the vast majority of the jails ended up becoming a mental health facility, because that's where they all ended up at. And it's sad. And I've fought and fought because we don't need them. We don't need them there. They don't need to be there. They need to be somewhere where they can get some help, some real help. Correctional officers are trained to deal with violent people. They are not dealing with mental health issues. They don't have a PhD on the back of their name, and they need to be somewhere where mental health professionals can help them. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do is I'm having meetings with Coastal Empire Mental Health, with their new executive director. I would like to see some kind of change be made. I'd like to bring it back to council. I think that this needs to be brought to our legislative delegation because I think laws need to be changed. And I don't want to take anybody's freedom away from them, but there are some people out here that don't realize they need help. And they really do need help. And when law enforcement shows up, they don't know what to do with them because they have nowhere to go with them. And they end up back in our facility thinking that's probably the safest place for them. And here we go with that cycle of them going around and around again. And then my staff have to deal with it. And it's just not fair sometimes. And so, you know, all those things, you know, contribute to the working conditions inside a detention center. And, you know, we got to recruit some good staff. And sometimes, I don't know, we got to think outside the box on how we're going to get those staff in. I know that council is trying everything they, you know, every time I come in front of you all, I know that I'm always asking, and I'm always asking for my staff, because when you're down the amount of staff that we're down, we get concerned. And so we're going to keep working towards it. I'm a constant optimist, I will promise you that. We're going to keep working towards recruiting new staff. I hope people get to see us on the gas pumps and want a career in law enforcement. I hope that there are people out there, because my time is coming to an end. Some of my older staff, their times are coming to an end, and some new people need to come into this profession, and they need to pick up that baton and keep on going with it and serve the community. That's what we were here for, is to serve our community. So, real quick, I'll move on to emergency medical services. I talked a little bit on TV about the new facilities we opened up. We are, you know, when we estimate a new facility coming in, we're estimating about $1.5 million for the building. We're estimating about $700,000 a year annually for the 10 paramedics and EMTs that it's going to take to cover those ambulances, and about somewhere in the neighborhood of about $400,000 for a new ambulance along with equipment. So those are some of the things that we're going to have to talk about during budget time. Those are going to be some costs that get associated with opening up a new station. One of the other things I want to thank Steve, thanks for sticking around again. We have a Narcan grant with EMS, and that's going to help us purchase Narcan. We spend annually about $4,000, maybe $5,000 on Narcan. That's how much we use. And we've got a grant, and luckily Steve has helped us with getting that grant, and it's going to help pay for our Narcan. So hopefully that'll help us for the next, I believe it's what is it 3 or 4 years? 4 years. 4 years that we're going to get funding for Narcan. So that's always good news, that we get some money bringing in there. We talked a little bit about mosquito control. Thank you for bringing mosquito control up. It is one of those services, along with a lot of my services, that, you know, if nobody's complaining, nobody really knows what's going on, because we're still working behind the scenes there. And one of the things that we will be putting in our CIP request, our capital improvement request for this upcoming budget year, for the next 3-year cycle for CIP, will be a new lab facility. The facility we have out there is dated. It was a mobile unit that was brought in, and in order to keep the program, the mosquito control program, a viable program, that is a key component. of having a lab and identifying those mosquitoes, especially the ones that are carrying diseases like West Nile and Triple E that are very dangerous. We have to be able to get to these mosquitoes, trap them, bring them in, get them in the lab, and have our entomologists identify them, figure out that they're carrying that disease, which is very difficult if you're thinking about how small those little guys are. Trying to dissect them and figure out that they got diseases in them, and that way we can get to the treatment to those areas where they need to be treated at. We still send those mosquitoes into DHEC to get certified that they are carrying the West Nile or whatever it was when we identified it. And believe it or not, we're usually at about 99% correct every time that we've identified it. So just wanted to bring that up. Again, I want to thank everybody for their support as always. I certainly want to thank the citizens of Beaufort County for allowing us to serve them every day. And I want to thank my chairman of my committee, Councilman McKellen, who's always been a staunch supporter of mine. So thank you all. Now, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer anything of any one of those 4 departments.
Mr. Dawson. You're on mute still.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, Phil, great presentation. Thank you for the updates that you've given us and your insight into future requests that you're going to make for your departments. You talked a little bit about the detention center and how the mental illness clients is a challenge for you, and I concur with you. I've had the opportunity to witness some of the instances that you actually described. But in addition to that, there's an element that I think we need to also mention and bring to the forefront, and that's our juveniles that you and your staff have to deal with in the detention center. Can you give us a little bit of insight on that? And the one question that I would ask is, I know that we've had discussions in the past about juvenile detention center here locally. So are there any ongoing discussions with our counterparts in Hampton, Jasper, as far as doing something on that scale from a regional point of view?
Thank you, sir. We're always trying to pursue what would be in the best interest of law enforcement. Anytime that a juvenile is arrested in Beaufort County, they have to be transported either to Somerville or up to Columbia to be held. And then they have to go all the way back up there, transport them back for a bond hearing, and then if they're held over, they're transported all the way back up again. So for local law enforcement, it's very taxing to deal with the juvenile, and it would help to have a local juvenile detention. Nothing as of right yet, Mr. Dawson. We are still holding juveniles that are adjudicated as an adult in our facility, and those are usually people that are 17 years old. About 2 years ago, South Carolina changed their law on the age of an adult. An adult used to be 17 in the state of South Carolina. They changed it to the age of 18 to fall in line with federal guidelines. We were one of 3 states that were at 17 as an adult. And so now our juvenile population is, it's interesting because those 17s that used to be adult now are juveniles, and so you have to rethink how you're doing things. And so yeah, we're still holding juveniles. We're holding the ones that are adjudicated, and we never do give up on talks with the other counties to try to regionalize something like that. Hopefully we will get there one day.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Have a good day.
Okay. This,
Okay, that pretty much concludes our presentation, Mr. Chairman. You didn't hear from all 27 of the bureaus, commissions, departments, and districts, but I'm sure that we will be hearing from them as we go through the next budget cycle.
Thank you. And so there's no further action. We will declare this meeting adjourned, and tomorrow we will have one final department, the Public Facilities Department, and then we will have a wrap-up. So we are now adjourned.